You know, it's been called the final frontier of science, a mystery that's hiding in plain sight, right inside each of our heads. So let's just dive right in. What is consciousness? For thousands of years, this was a question for philosophers. But now neuroscientists are tackling it head-on, and what they're finding is shaking up, well, pretty much everything we thought we knew about our inner world.
Just take a second and think about that. It's the most basic, fundamental fact of your life. There's the way a sunset looks, that vibrant red, the sharp sting you feel from a paper cut, the smell of fresh coffee in the morning. These are all subjective, private experiences. So why don't our brains just process all that information in the dark? You know, like a computer. Why is there this inner movie playing, this rich, personal world of feeling and awareness?
And this image, it just gets to the heart of it perfectly. That question, how the physical stuff, the neurons and electrical signals in your brain, gives rise to the non-physical feeling of being you. That's what philosophers famously call the hard problem. For decades, scientists pretty much thought this was way too subjective, just too slippery to even study. But wow, has that changed.
Okay, so we've got the what, this deep, profound mystery of experience. But the really exciting part now is the how. We're moving past just asking the question and are now finally in an era where we're searching for the answer inside the brain itself. The quest has officially moved out of the philosopher's armchair and straight into the neuroscience lab. The field has seriously come of age. I mean, in the early days, the whole search was for neural correlates, which is basically just finding which parts of the brain light up when we're conscious of something. But now, the ambition is so much bigger. Scientists are building these huge, comprehensive theories that don't just find correlations. They aim to actually explain consciousness. And they're putting those theories to the test.
So if we're building and testing theories, who are the main players in this big intellectual race? Well, while there are a ton of ideas floating around, the modern debate is really dominated by a few heavy hitters. Let's meet the top three and see how they each try to crack the hard problem.
First up, we've got Global Workspace Theory, or GWT. The core idea here is a really powerful metaphor. Your mind is like a theater. Most of the work is happening backstage, in the dark, all these countless unconscious processes. But when one piece of information gets hit by the spotlight of your attention, it's broadcast from the stage to the entire audience of all the other brain systems. And that global broadcast, that is consciousness. You can see that core idea right here. A specific piece of information, let's say it's the sight of a friend's face, it enters this central workspace, and then boom, it's made available to the whole system. From there, it can be used for memory, for planning, for deciding what to do next. Consciousness, in this view, is basically a functional hub for sharing the important stuff. So the key takeaway for GWT is that the sign of a conscious state is that the information is globally accessible. This requires these long-range connections crisscrossing the brain. And the theory suggests this whole workspace is physically located in a network spread across the brain's frontal and parietal lobes, the areas we use for high-level thinking.
Okay, on to our second contender. Integrated Information Theory, or IIT. This one takes a totally different angle. It's much more fundamental. IIT says consciousness isn't about broadcasting information, it's about integrating it. It even gives us a way to measure it, mathematically, with something called phi. A system is conscious based on how unified and irreducible its information is.
And this is where IIT gets really wild. It's the first major theory that tries to slap a number on consciousness, that phi value. And because of this, it makes a pretty startling claim. Any system with a high enough phi, not just a brain, but maybe a super complex circuit, or even, controversially, the internet, could be conscious. And crucially, IIT says the physical home of consciousness is a hot zone in the back of the brain, the posterior cortex, where all our sensory info gets richly woven together.
And our third major theory is actually a whole family of theories called higher order theories, or HOT. The big idea here is that consciousness is all about a kind of self-awareness. So a mental state like seeing the color red isn't conscious all by itself. It only becomes conscious when a higher order part of your brain has a thought about that first thought. So you're not just seeing red, you are aware of the fact that you're seeing red.
And this is a great way to picture it. You've got this lower order state, which is just the raw sensory data. Consciousness happens when another part of the brain creates this meta-representation that sort of points to or monitors that first state. It's almost like consciousness is a form of inner reflection.
So, Hott makes this really important distinction between just having an experience and being aware that you're having it. To do that, you need some pretty sophisticated cognitive machinery for self-monitoring. And because of that, these theories point right to the prefrontal cortex, the brain's executive control center, as the place where this higher-order awareness happens.
So there you have it, our three major theories. And as you've probably noticed, they don't exactly agree with each other. In fact, they make totally different claims about what consciousness is, and really importantly, where it lives in the brain. And that sets the stage for a major scientific showdown.
This table just lays the conflict out perfectly. You've got GWT with its idea of a global broadcast up in the frontal and parietal networks. Then there's ITT arguing it's all about integrated information in a hot zone at the back. And finally, HOT, which says it's about meta-awareness coming from the prefrontal cortex. I mean, they're pointing to completely different mechanisms and completely different parts of the brain. The disagreement really couldn't be more clear.
You could actually boil this whole conflict down to a simple front of the brain versus back of the brain debate. GWT and Hott are the front of the brain theories. They say consciousness is an advanced executive function, tied to things like reasoning and self-monitoring. Then you have IIT, the back of the brain theory, arguing that consciousness is more fundamental, that it comes from the rich, direct integration of what we see and hear, which happens in the posterior cortex. Both sides have great arguments, but they can't both be right.
So, how on earth do you solve a debate like this? Well, this is where the science gets really cool. Instead of just arguing about it, researchers have designed a way to try and force a conclusion, a direct, experimental showdown between the theories.
It's this amazing process called adversarial collaboration. And here's how it works. You literally get the main proponents of two rival theories, say GWT and IIT, into the same room. They work together to design experiments where their theories make opposite, conflicting predictions. Then an independent lab runs the experiments, and everyone agrees beforehand to accept the results. It's just a really powerful and honest way to push the science forward.
And this quote from neuroscientist Emil Seth really captures the moment we're in. This kind of rigorous, collaborative testing shows a new maturity for the field. This study of consciousness isn't some fringe idea anymore. It has absolutely earned its place as a legitimate and, frankly, fascinating area of science.
But there is a huge challenge here. These theories aren't set in stone. They're constantly being tweaked and refined. So when new data comes in that doesn't quite fit, a theory can sometimes be modified a little bit to account for it. This makes landing a definitive knockout blow on any single theory incredibly difficult. It's like trying to hit a moving target.
So where does all of this leave us? We're smack in the middle of a scientific revolution, but the final chapter is nowhere close to being written. Let's look ahead and see what the next frontier might hold for this incredible quest. If there's one thing that's clear, it's that there is still way more disagreement than agreement. Scientists are intensely debating the most fundamental questions, like, what are we even trying to explain here? What does a good theory of consciousness even look like? The quest is absolutely underway, but we are still, in many ways, just at the beginning.
And this all brings us to one of the most urgent questions of our time. As artificial intelligence gets more and more sophisticated, with some systems even claiming to be sentient, the need for a real scientific theory of consciousness is becoming critical. Is consciousness about information processing? Is it about integration? Or is it about self-reflection? The answer isn't just going to tell us about ourselves. It might just define the future of intelligence itself.